Hey everybody, welcome back to Live from Krakoa. I'm Cap,
I'm Perseus.
and we got a new story for you guys today. We're taking just a split route on this guy. This is an independent book called Nemesis. If you guys haven't read this, I highly recommend picking it up. It's a really cool book, written by Mark Millar, illustrated by one of my absolute all-time favorite artists, Steve McNiven. I've met him a couple times. Super great guy. Got a remark on a Civil War book. But great story. Now, this one is for the adult crowd. This is not a PG show this time, guys. Nemesis gets really, really violent and really bloody. So we start off in Tokyo. And in Tokyo, we've got a weird supervillain in all white with just his mouth showing. And he's got this police chief tied up to a chair sitting on what some sort of tunnel. And he says, yeah, it looks like you guys are coming to save you, but too bad they went to the wrong building. And I said you were going to die at 10:35 exactly. And you see a bunch of SWAT people running into a building. They get blown up. And the chief is screaming, you won, just kill me. He goes, no, it's not 10:35 yet. And the train always runs on time. And takes a step back. And bam! Train hits the police chief, starts running through. And one of his henchmen, he says something weird like, "Oh, I can't believe did you see his face? That was cool." And Nemesis says it's not done yet. And that's when you realize the bomb that went off was actually toppling a building onto the train tracks. So everybody on the train dies too. Huge, epic disaster right at the beginning of our story. And the henchmen ask him, well, what are you going to do next? And he says, there's a cop over in the United States I've got my eye on. Head over to God, what still to me looks like Hugo Weaving in a grocery store. Yeah. Super realistic artwork here, guys. Steve McNiven is amazing at that. But we get into it looks like we're in a grocery store and this guy with a shotgun shooting some guys with guns that were robbing it and holding hostages. And it turns out to be Super Cop Chief in Washington, D.C. The FBI shows up as he's leaving the scene and says, hey, we got this card from how are you aware of the Nemesis situation? And it says, Blake Morrow, March 12th, midnight, flatline still counts. Apparently this is the way Nemesis has been threatening everybody. So Chief Morrow says, all right, it's time to take care of business. We're going to need to lock down, get my wife and kids into protective custody, buy her some flowers because she's going to be mad. And then we're aboard Air Force One. President's flying out, doing his thing, and as he's flying over, Nemesis lands on the plane. Just
out of nowhere.
Yeah. Just jumps on the plane like he's a freaking Thundercat. Bam. Pulls out this huge gun, kills the pilots, takes the plane, crashes it into the middle of Washington in the street, disappears with the president. We cut back to our chief, and he's like, man, what the heck is going on? And then when a video cast comes up with Nemesis holding the president of the United States of America hostage and calling out our hero for this story, Chief Blake Morrow.
All right, so then we get into part two. In part two, we get a little bit of the backstory of Nemesis or what we think is Nemesis, which is Matthew Anderson, and his background of like this abusive and weird cultish family. And that, they did some, pretty messed up stuff, kind of Klansman type things. And then they get caught, they get turned in and taken to jail, and the son is thrown into foster care. And then as you go, you're kind of learning some of this, but during this time, Nemesis is destroying the Pentagon, going through and killing everybody. And so you get like little pieces of his past along with the carnage of him doing the Pentagon. And then he everybody's out to get him now because he's just killed a ton of people. And he's driving an Audi. It's funny because you could see the circles on the front of the hood, an Audi R8. And he's driving it, and
I made sure you knew he had the money to get away.
Right, that he was loaded. I mean, it was good enough for Iron Man, right?
Right.
So, there's helicopters and everything sitting there blasting away at his car, and he gets, this whole big car chase, and the car turns into a motorcycle, and he slips through, dives into the water, and goes in through the sewers. And as he's popping out of the sewers, there's our main guy. There's Blake with a gun on him, and they take
Surrounded
him
with his whole SWAT team, not
with-
taking any chances.
with not just one SWAT team. Like this
Yeah.
is everybody, and they take him into the custody, and that's actually so 2 was a bit quicker than the rest of them, mainly because they had a lot of action going on at the same time they were telling things. So it
A lot of really cool graphic, really awesome artwork coming through here, from the point like when they're sitting in the Pentagon and all the poison's coming through. And,
and they're grasping for air
Yeah.
and turning red and everything. So it was definitely one of those chapters where you just kind of went back over it because there's like little details, more details to see than you would think.
Right, and with a mini series like this, when you get to the halfway point of the book, it has to really draw people in for the next 2, because the first one is always an introduction of the story. The second one is where you're going to have your nice big meat. In these mini series like this, you got to catch the readers. And you remember, guys, me and Perseus here were reading these books when they were coming out. So we were making months, and some of these independent books, 2-3 months before the next one would come out. So this is like the edge of your seat right at the top of the story. But from here, we start to get really out there.
Yeah, well, I mean, this whole series is really out there in the sense of
Yeah.
just it started off like nonstop. Yeah, it doesn't really ever slow down.
Yeah.
Like
It's not an anti-hero book. It's not a cheer for
It's
the
not.
villain book. It's a like this reads
It's-
like a movie script. It's so good.
yeah, it's a what the hell is going on type.
Exactly.
But yeah, so that leaves that ends chapter 2 right there. It was him getting captured, and that leads us into chapter 3, which he's in the prison.
Okay. All right, guys. Chapter 3. We're getting into the second half of Nemesis. This is where everything's about to go down. Here's where all of our twists and turns come in, guys. So we start off with Nemesis getting taken to prison. All the cops are back there. Now, this guy's killed a lot of people, everybody. You got to remember that you got Tokyo, the plane crash, the huge police chase, everything that's been going on. So they're talking trash to him. We cut to some news scenes where the president of Japan is thanking Chief Morrow for capturing him, for avenging his fallen chief, and the Andersons are saying, we're glad he's been caught. We didn't know he was such a horrible person. The guy they believe him to be.
Yeah, the uncle.
The uncle, yeah. Who was a very big philanthropist. And then we get to the chief making a speech, and they're wheeling Nemesis in. Now, they're not taking any chances. This is full-on Hannibal Lecter style. They've got him strapped to a table. He's getting wheeled through. And as he's talking to the cops, he just says, Johnny, lights. Lights cut out, cut back on. His entire guard is dead except for one, who turns out to be one of his henchmen. He lets him out, and when I tell you guys, the next few pages is the most gruesome carnage I have ever seen drawn in comic book history. It is, we're talking chopping through throats, crushing faces. There's a panel where he's kicking out someone's eye, and he's taking out all the cops in this prison. All the while, we're switching back and forth with panels about speeches about how they're glad they got him locked up. He's never getting out. Man, they didn't know what was going on. So he breaks out all the prisoners. They're all running out. And they're like, how are we getting out of here? Take the getaway cars. The keys are in the ignition. Which ones? All of them. And you see the parking lot is just filled with white Audi
R8s.
R8s.
Yeah.
So everybody gets away. And as the chief's coming off from his speech, he walks down. Sergeant, what's going on? Why is my phone going off during this speech? Nemesis got out and got all the prisoners out with him. And then you see the prison just gone,
Just
blowed
destroyed.
up, destroyed, completely gone. Chief says, where are my wife and kids? Crap. We had gotten him out of protective custody. All they could find is his wife. His kids have been kidnapped by the Nemesis. Nemesis calls up the chief and says, your wife has your big 3 family secrets that you don't know about because you chose your career over your family. I'm going to call you back and you got to tell me what they all are. So the chief asks for his staff to give him the room so he can talk to his wife, and then we cut back. Nemesis calls him back, and you ready to tell me all your secrets? Because I'm about to air them out if you don't. So the chief reveals his 3 family secrets that his wife just told him. The first one is that she had an affair with his first partner and almost left him for it, but his partner got engaged to his now wife. The second secret is that his son is a homosexual. And the third secret is that his daughter had an abortion and didn't tell him before college.
Which, let's put this into context. This character is supposed to be one of those good old boy American, right. Good Christian guy who this is unacceptable type stuff,
Yeah, and he says as he's reading his family secrets for his son, he goes, I'd love my son no matter what. For his wife, he said, it was my fault. I neglected her. I was doing too much to advance my career. And for his daughter, he said he didn't feel like she should have had to keep anything from him. He would have accepted whatever she wanted. But Nemesis says, all right, you can have your kids. They're outside in a truck. Chief Morrow, they go to the next panel. They're outside. The kids are in the truck, relatively unharmed. And Nemesis keeps saying relatively. We cut to the doctor, and it turns out that the sister has been artificially impregnated by the gay brother with her womb booby trapped to collapse if they try to terminate the pregnancy. So if she doesn't have the twins, she'll never be able to have kids. But after the kids come, then the trap will be released. So we've got a rough ride on this train for our chief in Chapter 3 in Nemesis. So he says, you know what, I've had enough. Calling my boy Kirby. Turns out to be Jackie, Nemesis henchman all along, who gives him all the details on where we can get Nemesis. We cut to the end of the book with the chief coming out with his shotgun saying it's time. Let's nail this son of a bitch.
Yeah, so this goes into Chapter 4, and it's funny because they're going to Matthew Anderson's home.
Yep.
And the full blown operation here, and but some they're talking, and the chief's like, wait a second, this seems off, this doesn't seem right, and tells everybody to start pulling back, and all of a sudden, boom, the house explodes. So you kind of get the feeling like, wait, somebody else is in on this.
There's a big setup going on.
And sure enough, the captain was knocked out during the blast, and so he's hearing people talking, and turns out it's his partner, who was working for Nemesis the whole time.
The sergeant.
Yeah, the sergeant, and he sits there, and Nemesis is talking, or the sergeant's talking crap to the captain about how, oh, you're so good, but you couldn't see this coming, blah blah blah. And and eventually, Nemesis blows the sergeant's brains out because he didn't need him anymore, and he was done. He was done. But right when he does that, he opens the curtain and shows that they're actually in the White House, and that that they drug him to the White House, and he strapped a suicide bomber vest on both the captain's wife and the president. And he gives the captain the clicker to choose between the two of them. Well, the president decides, fuck that. He takes the clicker from him, charges at Nemesis, and blows himself up, knocking him out the window. And
super, yeah, we're ready to go, man. We are done with this dude. He was effed up too much.
He was like, no, I don't care. The president was like, I'm taking you out with me. And Nemesis is like, oh, I got an old guy on me. So, the captain, after, he jumped away with his wife and making sure she was okay, he goes running out to finish Nemesis off. They get into a big battle and everything, and the captain gets shot quite a few times, but he finally shoots Nemesis in the head, and he's dead, right? So,
seems like a quick end of the story, right, guys?
Yeah. So further, it was like 2 years down the road. 10 years down the road.
Yeah.
The captain gets a chief. Yeah, he gets a letter saying, "Hey, we we basically that it was like an organization that gets paid to make people's dreams come true, whether they're legal or not, type of thing. And most people want to be villains, super villains, and so they give them everything they need to be a super villain.
Yep.
So and basically that, you know, the guy that runs this thing was sorry that the chief had gotten mixed up in everything,
Wrapped up in his scheme.
Yeah, and but that.
And he even mentions, like, I'm glad that the kids were born and that you and your wife helped raise them.
Right.
He goes back and touches on everything, like he had known everything was going to happen.
Right. Well, I mean, I think literally what, as far as the way I was seeing it was, the guy, Anderson, paid to basically have this whole thing set up to where all he had to do was play the part,
right,
and get to do the feeling. He didn't have to sit there and decide how everything was going to go or nothing. Like, I think he was basically riding the rails of this company's
just basically turned into a supervillain. And it seems like that's something that they're doing, because he even says in the letter, you know, in his long-winded letter, stay out of Los Angeles.
Yeah, like there's something about to happen there.
And then and mentions a lot of these things. And Chief asked the waiter guy, hey, when did these come in? 10 years ago. So it all happened at the end of the story. This is... That's a lot of planning.
Yeah. I mean, it's that's one of the awesome things about it. Because basically, you know, Nemesis could be anybody.
Right,
but it's... You know,
which makes a kind of terrifying point right there.
Right.
I mean,
so technically,
who's the supervillain that's going to take out
our
president?
I guess as long as you got the money. Well, once all the billionaires are dead, probably
right. Because it was some sort of billionaire program, and I mean, when you're going through the story and you think back after you're reading the end here, you got to think back. Well, he landed on top of the Air Force One plane,
which they never explain how.
So, you know, they never really talk about what his superpower is or what it is. You see him just chopping, kicking, shoving nightsticks through cops' faces and
but
heads.
He never actually does anything like superhuman.
He doesn't, right. There's anything superhuman. There's a lot of, like, there's
this
one scene where he's getting dressed and, like, there's robots, like, putting his gloves on, so you know he's got money, but they never talk about all these superpowers. And
but
then
he didn't even use, like, special weapons. He used regular weapons you could get anywhere.
Right. And then you find out that this was all just an experience that a millionaire could buy into. Well, which part was him that went in there? And which part was the real Nemesis? Or is there a real Nemesis? Was it all him the whole time? Maybe he just got souped up with, I don't think we've covered this on the channel yet, but you know, MGH, mutant growth hormone. I mean, that was giving people superpowers in the Marvel Universe. Was that where Mark Millar was pulling for him? Well, he did write a lot of that, too.
Well, I mean, when he wrote this, he was writing a lot of Marvel stuff.
Right, yeah.
That's why all these were actually released under Marvel Publishing. You know,
it's like their secondary publishing company, but it's still, they don't want to tie it in with the Marvel Universe, but it's their independent group.
Millar World.
Yeah.
Was the...
That's why it came on. Was it on Nemesis? I know it
on
popped up on some of them. So Mark Millar has a lot of great stories, but he changes a lot with the characters. Right, yeah. But you can tell when he came off on his independent, he was basing it off, you know, he was taking little pieces from Marvel and putting it in here. And we'll probably cover a couple more stories of his, because he's got some really good ones.
I love the actual Wanted. Like
the actual Wanted is not like the movie. Ladies and gentlemen, we might even actually have to have a show once about comic book movies that you didn't know were comic books, and how much better the books were. Way better books.
I mean, that's what it always is, right? The books were always better.
It really is. They can do more in it.
In Wanted's case, the book and the movie were nothing alike.
Wildly different.
Nothing alike. All there was the same was the little bit of bullet curving.
Yeah.
And even that was a side note.
Yeah, right. It wasn't even a part of the main story. It was just a way, like, you're an assassin. You guide your kills. It's not like, oh, look, if you shoot like this, James McAvoy, your Professor X powers are going to skirt it around Angelina Jolie.
Athena.
Athena. Yes,
Yeah.
let's save Athena, Professor Xavier. No, but Mark, I remember watching an interview online where Mark Millar was actually talking to Stanley.
Yeah.
And now, remember when I tell you guys, Mark was writing a lot of big stories. He wrote some Fantastic Four. He did Civil War. He did Old Man Logan, where he took Wolverine's like entire existence and redefined it in this post-utopian world. And he wrote a lot of these post-utopian stories. And Stan said to him, "You're constantly changing my characters. Why don't you just make your own? You have all these great ideas. Just make your own story." And Mark actually, that's when Millar World and him and Marvel started doing these independent stories with these really cool concept and characters. And we're going to get more into a couple more books that are really cool.
Well, it's really amazing how many books that people are starting to know nowadays that are him, you know, because Wanted was him. Most people didn't know that.
Yeah.
Because the book was so different. Jupiter's Legacy, American Gods. That's Neil Gaiman.
Neil Gaiman. No. American Jesus was his, but that was kind of
God Country. Or no, that wasn't God. He wasn't God Country.
No. I can't even remember who was God Country.
But anyways, Kick-Ass. You know.
We've got a lot of the ones that are coming on Netflix now that are from Millar World. So later on, as he gets bigger and starts writing these cool stories,
Super Crooks.
Super Crooks.
Millar.
Super Crooks gets picked up by Netflix, and they want to start publishing his book because Marvel can't afford to keep doing this. They're so good and they're so popular, but that's a lot of printing on top of what they're already doing for their regular series. So he goes over to Netflix and starts getting all that stuff.
Marvel's printing sucks anyways.
Oh, come on.
They print on that crappy paper.
Sometimes
wavy and it's horrible. At least at the independents, like
Stan, I don't know what he says.
Images and stuff like that. They print on good paper, and you don't have to sit there and feel like you're on a boat because of the waves in your paper.
Stan, I don't know what he's talking about.
Hey, it's not Stan's fault. That's Marvel or Disney.
Disney now, yes. But no, so he gets his own, and that's where a lot of these movies are coming from. So it's a big turn from, some of these books to what they can put on TV, even with Jupiter's Legacy. That the book was wildly different. But there's a lot of stuff you cannot, it doesn't matter if you're Netflix and it's a paid subscription. There's some of this stuff. I heard that they're getting ready to do a Nemesis movie. They're not going to be able to do some of this artwork here.
I'm actually really shocked they canceled that Jupiter's Legacy because it seemed
it was amazing.
Yeah, I really liked it, and I thought they actually did a pretty good job of converting the comic book.
They did. They did. There was a little bit of difference in there, and I mean,
but sometimes you just can't. It's unavoidable.
You can't do some things on TV that you can.
The only one I've seen be so comically accurate so far is Sandman.
That's a good one.
Fantastic.
That's a good one. Kick-Ass was very, very close. But there was one small plot point that they changed that changed the entire story.
Yeah.
That kills the comic book. Makes the comic book version way better than the movie. And I love the movie. But the comic book version, just one small plot point. I'm not going to tell you guys too much. We might cover it in a story later on. Or you might be curious enough to go check it out for yourself. But for tonight, we want to thank you guys for coming in and sharing this book with us. It's another one that means a lot to us. If you're out and about and you see it, Nemesis by Mark Millar and Steve McNiven.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us. I've been Perseus.
I'm Cap.
And we'll talk to you in the next one.
Thank you for watching Krakoa Live.